Welcome to Ideagen's Global Partnerships Summit live from the NASDAQ. Today, I'm beyond honored to have with us Gretchen O'Hara from Splunk. Welcome.
Thank you. Really happy to be here.
Grace Clack from Microsoft. Welcome.
Thank you.
And BJ Moore from Providence.
Thank you, George.
BJ, great to see you again.
Great to be here. Thank you, George.
Great to see you all again. And we're live, as I said, here at the NASDAQ market site. It is an incredible day during this Global Partnerships Summit. And I'd like to lean right into this interview, beginning with BJ. BJ, in your opinion, of course, what is the best strategy or strategies to help achieve the global goals from your vantage point?
Well, I think the best strategies for achieving them is really aligning them with the mission of the company. So at Providence, it's Help for a Better World. We're here to serve our communities, serve the poor and vulnerable. And so when we see those 17 global goals, they just naturally align with what our organizational mission is, our vision is. And so it's really easy to get people on board, as we do our digital transformation at Providence, because those 17 already so align well with what Providence is about.
And that was a great question, I think, because you're also wearing the Global Goals pin.
Yeah, very proudly. Yeah, thank you.
And so you're obviously sold on the Global Goals.
I'm all in. Absolutely.
You're all in. You're all in. And so I'd like to turn to Grace. Grace, partnerships.
Yes.
This is the Global Partnerships Summit live at the NASDAQ market site. Why are global partnerships so critically important?
Yeah. So at Microsoft, one of the strengths there is the partner ecosystem. And so they truly believe in the power of partnerships. I think it's understanding where your strengths are and then understanding where your partners can come in and complement your strengths. So because you can't do it yourself. So I think that's how to think about utilizing partnerships.
And of course, Gretchen, you were also at Microsoft. You are now newly minted at Splunk.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Very excited.
Amazing. So partnerships.
Yeah.
Tell us about why are they important to you?
Right up my alley. As I'm now leading partnerships at Splunk as the channel chief. But no, I've always believed in the value of partners, as we've talked about many times before. And I think from my perspective, I think of partnerships almost more as an ecosystem, because similar to Grace, you can't do it all, and not every one partner can do it all. And so the collective, to me, is something that is really about sort of unleashing the untapped potential when we bring multiple people together aligned to the same vision and goals. And so I love the fact that we are on the discussion of partnerships and global partnerships, because no one company, no one individual person can really do it by themselves.
You can't do it by yourself. We've heard that time and time again, and I know you all believe that wholeheartedly. BJ, mentors.
Yeah.
You've had mentors. I know you've mentioned mentors in the past to me, and so many people have shaped who you are and who you've become in your life's journey. Who are your mentors? Who are some of those mentors that you could point back and say, wow, they affected my life's trajectory? And what was the most impactful thing they taught you?
Sure. Well, I'm going to go way back in the time machine. Unfortunately, I'm going to date myself, but I'm going to go back in the 90s when I was early in my career. At the time, my mentor's name was John Connors. He was the corporate controller, became the CFO at Microsoft. And the key lesson he taught me was to push myself beyond my comfort zone. He would continue to put me in roles or positions or challenges that frankly far exceeded what I thought was capable of. But he had the confidence in me, provided the support for me. And because of that, it really became an accelerator for my career, really became an accelerator for me growing as a leader. And so having a mentor that, actually believed in me more than I believed in myself, and taught me that I could really push the boundaries in such a unique way and grow at such an accelerated rate. He's probably the single mentor that really set my trajectory early on in my career. And so I'll say John Connors.
That's an incredible tribute. I just am struck by that when you come up with a specific person and what they did for you. I mean, it's kind of like it leaves an indelible mark.
Yep.
An indelible mark on not only your life, but when you mention it today,
Yeah.
I likely will never forget that, describing that. Grace, what example do you have of
Yeah.
a mentor that?
I'll actually go back to earlier in my Microsoft career as well. My very first general manager, David Grubb. And he was, I think the greatest thing that he taught me was that, well, one of the things I realized is that as a team, we were such an amazing chemistry as a team. And I remember talking to him about it and him saying that you can hire for experience, you can hire for skill and strategy. But for him, it was hiring about the chemistry of the team to make sure that you can work as a team together. And that was just such a huge takeaway for me as I progressed in my career and prioritizing who I work with and who my managers are, because that was such an amazing time to be with that group of people.
It's incredible to hear. I mean, I'm just, awestruck by this because I feel like, to BJ's point, imagine someone believing in you more than you believe in yourself. That's profound. And to hear about hiring for chemistry and ultimately the kindred spirit notion, I mean, that's incredible. And so, Gretchen, I know you've had so many mentors.
I have been very fortunate. Very fortunate. I'm actually trying to think about, with my one single, I don't know. I'll put it into two categories. I think personally, growing up, one of the things that sort of shaped who I am and the importance around gender equity from my perspective was my grandmother early on. She was one of 13 children, fought to be college educated, paid her way through school back then and became a school teacher and basically a full working mother in a time when I think that was a very challenging time. And, I always from afar sort of thought that, wow, she can do this. And the power of education and the power of being able to have knowledge was something that she always instilled in me. And that kind of started and shaped the way that I thought very, very important to just be able to go out and give back in the world. And then many, many work mentors as well. One, I think, really important is a gentleman named Dave Willis. He was a corporate vice president at Microsoft for many years. But one of the things that he taught me was the importance of collaboration and the ability to get things done through the connection of others. And I think really and tapping into sort of that people connection was one of the most important things, because it's a complex world and everyone has sort of different priorities. And how do you bring people together to ultimately get alignment and goals done? And that's really served me well and part of one of my core leadership principles, quite frankly.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, it has served you well. It's served you all well. And I see it each and every time we interact. I think the belief in others, the ability to lift people up, and now it's been instilled in you. And I can't even imagine, we don't have time for more questions. We could be here all day talking about all those that you're all lifting up, because it does take that effort and that sort of focus to believe in others. Maybe even, like you said, I'll never forget that, BJ, believe in others perhaps more than they even believe in themselves.
Absolutely.
To help them get to that next level. What is an obstacle that you faced during your careers, and how did you overcome it? I'll ask you to raise your hand to go first. I don't want to. Okay, BJ. Yes.
So, I was at Microsoft for 27 years, had a great career there, had a real impact. One of the things I questioned myself, though, is after 27 years, you've got the strong network, you're a subject matter expert, of course you can be successful. And so one of the reasons I left Microsoft to go to Providence is obviously not only to help healthcare on the digital transformation, but I needed to prove for myself I could go to a space where I wasn't a subject matter expert, where I had no network, where I had no expertise. Could I build and start something from scratch? And so that move to Providence was that challenge. As you know, George, I was there for a year before the pandemic hit. So what was pretty a big challenge, and then turbocharged it. But the pandemic and the focus that it brought Providence to serve our communities actually acted as an accelerant. So I'm happy to say I feel like I've overcome that challenge. I've proved that I can succeed in multiple environments. and then the curveball of the pandemic, and really being able to double down and serve our communities and still march on that, digital transformation.
And you in Providence were where patient zero
We were.
ended up,
Mhm.
right? And in what was that? March of 2020?
No, it was January
January.
20th of 2020. Yeah, the very first patient came into our Everett hospital, and we successfully treated that patient. And yeah, so Seattle, the Northwest, was kind of the epicenter in the beginning of COVID, and my hospital system, Providence, was literally patient zero.
Incredible. Thank you for all you've
Yeah,
done. I know
absolutely.
you played a big role in this mitigation of this pandemic, so we're so
Thank you,
deeply
George.
grateful.
I appreciate it.
I'll go next. Let's see. So earlier on in my career, I was on the ad agency side of the world. And a number of years into it, I thought, I feel like an ad agency is a young person's game. And I knew that it wasn't going to be my long game. So I had to figure out where do I go from here? How do I get to where I need to go from here? And just kind of took this leap of faith. A prior manager of mine actually had made the leap over into what we had called the client side. And she had told me about a role over at Microsoft. And it was scary because it was a corporate environment. It was a global entity. But I knew that if I didn't do it then, I don't know when I was going to make that leap. So I think it was one, like tapping into your network. And I think we had talked about this yesterday, like one of the important things you can do is networking and continuing to build those relationships. And so because I had that with her, I trusted that, she was enjoying working there. So I ended up looking into it. And I think that if you can trust that you can do it and you have that support network, that makes a whole lot of difference.
Incredible. Thank you.
Well, I love the question because I would say for the first part of my career, it was a time in the technology industry where you weren't really proud of those, those failures. Let me just say, and you sort of hid those failures in a lot of times because it was, that sort of time of like not being vulnerable, not sort of showing sort of where you fell down. And I love that we sort of celebrate this now, especially, for viewers here, because I think it helps shape and get you sort of, hey, you have a big challenge, a big adversity. How do you come out and what do you learn? So one of my biggest actually was I had left many established technology companies and I went to start my own technology company in the .com era and kind of gave it everything. And I had a brand new baby. Was in a startup environment, had my own equity as well as, investors early stage. And then the .com bust, if anyone recalls that, where literally companies were shutting and locking doors down and people would show up for work and they would literally be out of work. It was an unreal time. And I felt very lucky that was able to ultimately sell off the company. But for me, I had lost everything. I mean, I had a young baby. I didn't have healthcare. I, basically was essentially starting over. And it was a valuable lesson. One, first of all, I love the opportunity to always sit in the shoes and understand what sort of small business and entrepreneurship is. It has served me well my whole career. But it also gives you something around sort of tenacity and grit. We talk about resilience a lot now, obviously, sort of post-pandemic. But from my perspective, if you can give your all and you lose it, it shows you can get up and do it again. And so then it takes some of the fear factor out of taking those big risks going into healthcare, deciding you're going to switch out of advertising. From my perspective, it gives you a little bit of that safety net. It's like, what is the worst that can happen? I'm just going to do it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
Could there be another .com bubble?
And you
Never be that bad
don't know
again.
what's on the horizon,
That's
right?
right.
You just
That's
don't know. And so, being able to like see people go, you know what? I've like dusted myself off and we survive and we move on.
Yeah.
And I think it's a valuable lesson for all
It's a
of
great
us.
lesson.
Yeah.
It is a great lesson. And I'd like to shift to partnerships. So partnerships are so critical. This is the Global Partnerships Summit, live again from the NASDAQ market site. Why and how have partnerships been so important to the success of your careers?
Well, it's been said earlier, right? I mean, you can't do it on your own. You know, if you're doing anything at scale, if you're having big impact, there's only so much you can do as an individual. So those partnerships can be with other teams, other individuals, other companies. You know, it's bringing your own strengths, bringing the strengths of the partnerships. It's really the only way you can have the kind of scale and impact. You know, me as an individual, I think pretty highly of myself, but my impact is quite small. But my impact through partnerships, you know, is a force multiplier.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point about scale, because there is only so much we can all do. And what was that quote about? I'll take 1% of somebody's effort, but if I have 100 people's 1%, then that just adds up to a lot more effort than just one person's 100% effort. So take partnerships all day long.
Yeah.
So well said.
I agree with my colleagues on all fronts. I think leading channels my whole career. I'll add in addition to that force multiplier piece, there is a magic around finding the right value exchange with partners. Yeah. And you can uncover untapped markets, untapped potential. I think we've seen innovation in ways that we've never been able to with the acceleration, because together you can build unique things and be a builder and really go after sort of new opportunities together. And so certainly the scale, certainly the value of better together, but the unique value that you can bring into the market is just unstoppable.
It's exponential. And I'd like to go just a little bit further because I love partnerships so much. It's cross-sector.
Yep.
And BJ, you're the embodiment of that.
Sure.
I mean, we think tech. Yep. And it used to be that all the folks in tech would go to a tech conference.
Correct.
You're in healthcare now, but spent 27 years in tech.
Correct.
So why is the notion of cross-sector partnerships and collaboration so vital in this equation?
Well, I think it just amplifies the differentiators that each party brings, right? If you have two tech companies, you know, the overlap is, you know, pretty great. Whereas if you bring something like healthcare and, you know, something like technology, Microsoft, there's a little bit of overlap, but the additive effect is much greater. And so I'll speak to the partnership between Providence and Microsoft, right? Microsoft brings the technology. Providence brings that clinical expertise and knowledge. And then together, you know, we're able to do magic things, right? And so I just think cross-sector by definition becomes a broader impact because the overlap is much lower.
I think it's also the idea that a company really isn't just one sector, right? There's so many different, when you think about what companies accomplish. So for instance, our sustainability cloud, the way we think about how it can impact, it's not about, it's the sustainability industry. It's about sustainability is in every industry.
Right.
And so it's important to understand how it impacts healthcare versus manufacturing versus retail. So it's super important, especially from sustainability standpoint, to understand how the different sectors can either work together as well as with each other.
Yeah.
I just want to quickly add, that's where a value of a partner like Microsoft that cuts across sectors, right? Mm-hmm. So in partnering with Microsoft, say on sustainability, they can say, hey, retail, you know, is doing a good job here. And we really see manufacturing doing a good job here. And finance is doing a horrible job there. You know, avoid that, right? You can bring a broader perspective as well.
Yeah, I love the diverse perspective that both of you are talking about, because again, I think, you know, bringing only one sector together, you have a little bit of tunnel vision on sort of how you're thinking about solving these complex problems. When you bring sort of that cross-sector diversity into those challenges, new and unique ways are certainly being built. And so from my perspective, and I talked a little bit about this earlier, but I mean, every company, every organization is becoming a data company. And so technology, and sort of Splunk's perspective is technology will sit in every sector, regardless of where you are. So now it's like, how do you bring that unique expertise within each of those cross sectors to come together on what you're trying to accomplish? And in this case, I think we're really seeing traction because of this. in the Sustainable Development Goals, in my opinion. And on sustainability, no question that cross-sector partnership will accelerate where we're going on sustainability versus any just one sector or particularly government and policy alone.
And that whole notion of the sectors coming together, what we found early on at Ideagen was that we'd bring the public sector, we'd bring NGOs, we'd bring corporate together, and every sector speaks a different language.
They do.
Especially in Washington. Even in the departments, there's acronyms. By the time you figure out the acronyms, the conference
We all
is
have
over.
our extra acronyms and everybody.
Right. So there's acronyms. So, but by the time the conference is over or the meeting is over, you start to speak the same language. So that's the power of convenings like this, to be able to bring folks together to say, and then you unlock that, right?
Yeah.
You unlock that and start speaking a common language.
I love that point on
It's
the
like a
common
Rosetta
language,
Stone.
right?
Rosetta
of how bringing that together. But I mean, if you think about some of these things, there's just so many unique skills within each of those sectors that we would not have if we really, went alone. And so again, I think the brilliance of what we're doing here at Ideagen Global is really breaking those barriers down and having that common language, but also tapping into so many different skills that,
Completely.
right. And so every time you get to hear from the convening of us all, we learn so much together.
We learn so much.
I want to make sure the audience is hearing both sides of the coin, right? Because there is unique things to the industry, and partners like Splunk and Microsoft can bring that. But there's also these common components which each industry doesn't need to reinvent the wheel, right? When I came to healthcare, it was like healthcare is very different. But payroll's payroll, general ledger, general ledger.
Right.
People are people.
Yeah.
Like there's very common components that we
That's
don't need to reinvent the wheel because we're unique in healthcare. No, there's common components that we should quickly
That's a good
accelerate
point.
and
That's a very
take care
good
of
point.
partners, and then focus on the differentiator. But the differentiator is actually much smaller than I think most industries give themselves credit for.
Wow.
And so that's what I love about this conversation about the Microsoft example and Splunk example. We're bringing commonalities as well as bringing the differentiation of these verticals.
Incredible insights. I'm always, it's amazing how much you learn. You just continue learning. It's lifelong learning.
Continue
Right?
learning. I love that.
And I'd like to bring up a word called ethos. And that ethos is something we share with Microsoft. As you all know, you've all been at Microsoft. And you share that ethos, right? You've lived that ethos. And now, you're continuing that ethos in everything that you're doing. How does that impact your outlook on the way you live and do business?
Sure.
Who would like to answer that first?
I'll go first.
BJ.
Yeah, it's a dual-edged sword, right? Because unfortunately it creates an ethos that can be an asset, which I think technology and digital transformation is, but there's probably cases where I overuse that. But, coming into healthcare, it's just super valuable. Being at Microsoft for 27 years is always cutting edge, adopting the latest technologies, always proving out new capabilities. So the cloud, when I left Microsoft, I had been on a cloud journey for 10 years. When I joined Providence, they were still debating whether or not they should start a cloud journey. And so, technology can solve problems. Technology can be that force multiplier. Technology can be an enabler. So bringing that ethos from Microsoft, but then also just the experience, knowing I've had made 10 years of cloud mistakes and had 10 years of cloud learnings, and be able to take that to Providence and kind of get in the execution success mode, not discovery exploration mode.
Sure.
But I'm sure you can overplay the tech card, and I'm sure it's a blind spot for me. But yeah, overall, I think it serves me well.
Incredible.
We've talked about ethos before as well, and I think Microsoft creates an environment around doing good, and I think it sort of sets a high bar, certainly for the industry, and then of course cross sector and the way that we think about things. So from that shared ethos, in my perspective, one of my biggest learnings is doing good and doing good business is not mutually exclusive.
That's right.
And I think it's a really important thing for us to understand that you can do amazing things for the betterment of everyone. And you can also do good business that helps for the prosperity of everybody. And I think the combination around sustainability, around accessibility, around making sure that we're bringing together people in partnerships. That's that sort of ethos around doing good, and collectively we do good business. And I think it's an important concept.
And the better you do, the more good you can do.
That's
Sure.
exactly
So that's the
right.
idea, right?
It builds sustainable change, right?
Mm.
Because you ultimately can build the cycle of doing good, and we all then become
And sustainable
more prosperous.
partnerships, right?
That's
If you have that
absolutely
inequitable partnership, it may work okay for you for a year,
Right.
but now it's time to re-up the partnership. You're like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of took advantage of me in the first round.
Right,
I'm going to
right.
find a different partner.
No, that's right. We
That's
can't have a recyclable. We've got to build sustainable change, and in order to do that, we have to have that shared ethos
Yeah.
with the importance of doing both.
And that is what I appreciate about Microsoft is it's built into their mission. And I talked about this yesterday, but 93% of employees want to work for a company, know that a company should lead with purpose, and to be able to actually be at a company that lives that and make sure that that's their goal and their mission for not just their company, but for the world is just inspiring. And it helps to come to work every day and just feel like you are doing good.
You know what strikes me too about this conversation is that we talk about leadership and servant leadership and all the types of leadership, but it appears to me that the leaders of certain companies can also really affect that change and that ability to do more good, to do better, because you can be focused on, like, look, Satya Nadella comes to mind.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean,
Absolutely.
the empathy, the focus on helping, was it described, on ability,
Yeah.
to bring.
On all of the accessibility work
Mhm.
that's sort of
It's
leading
profound.
and changing the way that technology is becoming accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing to think about, because when you think about one person setting the tone, like when you
That's right.
plant that flag, whether it's raining, whether it's foggy, it's a golf course analogy. You can sort of still see the pin.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when you put that pin down, like
Mhm.
Satya's done, my gosh, you can change the world.
Yeah.
For all, I don't know what the employee count is now, but it's a lot of employees in Microsoft. So
Well, and
I thought you were describing Seattle weather. It's like raining and foggy. Like, okay, I got you, George. Yeah, that's Seattle.
But I mean, back to Grace's point, I mean, people can vote now with their feet. And I think that, employees in general across sectors are making decisions on purpose-driven missions and companies that have sort of the combination of both. And I think, to your point then with Satya sort of creating essentially this North Star, it gives everyone sort of opportunity to sort of change the way of which we engaged both with our employees, with our partners, and certainly with customers. And it's really nice to see that sea change happening across industries right now. It's really exciting.
I love it. What an inspiring interview. I come away from these interviews inspired, but this is profound. This is a profound conversation for the millions of people that will watch this. Thank you so very much. BJ
Thank you,
Moore,
George.
Providence, Grace Clack, Microsoft,
Thanks, George.
Gretchen O'Hara,
Thank
Splunk.
you, George.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
George.
everybody.
Appreciate it. Thank you.